gentlemen, Mark Barchi, the voice of the Mustangs, here with Neil Fisher from the Apopka Chief at Raymond Screws Field at West Orange High School for Week 5 of varsity football action here in the 2018 season. And Neil, the Mustangs have stacked up a very tough season this year, and this week, tonight, is going to be no exception to that.
Yeah, again, as we've mentioned since the beginning of the season, Mark, it's one thing to be good and to know you're good, but in order to maybe take that next step of going from a team that can win 9 or even go undefeated with 10 victories and get into the playoffs to the point of being able to contend for a state championship, you have to get some experience, and that only comes by scheduling teams of equal quality.
And for those of you who are watching us live real time and wondering why have we not kicked off yet, we were under a lightning delay. It looks like we are going to be able to get this sucker kicked off here in about 10 minutes. So in the meantime, though, we have an opportunity to come to you and do a little pregame analysis, Neil, as the Mustangs have had a little bit of a strategy shift over the last few weeks. In week 2, we saw a very run-oriented offense, very much led by Supreme Richardson with that left corner route, and thanks to his speed and thanks to the skill and consistency of the offensive line, the Mustangs were able to get away with what otherwise might have been a fairly predictable offense, running the same play over and over and over again. But now in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Larry Preston come in to trade places with Sean Robles more often, and we've seen a little bit more variety to the Mustangs offense.
Yeah, going back again to the start of the season, one of the I guess you say part of the game plan for the entire season was that the team was looking to evolve. Sometimes you can just do the same thing over and over. Wekiva doesn't have that kind of a team, especially on offense. They just don't have quite that skill level. That's not to say that they don't have any skill, but when you compare it to a lot of the bigger name teams around it, and West Orange is among them, they're just not quite as skilled. So what you got to do to compensate for that is you have to learn to evolve. And as I've said many times over the course of our broadcast, Wekiva has not necessarily always been consistent on offense, but they've always been constantly effective when they do get the ball, and of course that goes back to the evolution. As you mentioned, Supreme Richardson has been their, you say their ace, or if you could say a featured running back, he has been that featured running back carrying the ball about 2/3 of the time. He's the guy that kind of start that rushing game with, not necessarily chronologically, but as far as the impact. Then of course they found a gem, if you will, in Brandon Hill, who came in and added a spark, a lightning. Again, he's not necessarily, he can do more than just run outside. He's a very shifty runner with power.
And of course, on paper, he's a safety,
right,
which is what he's going to Pittsburgh for.
Right.
But he has just been a real wild card for the Mustangs. You see him everywhere. You see him in the secondary. You see him tackling running backs. You see him being a running back. But now, in the last couple of weeks, the Mustangs have not had to depend on him and his versatility as heavily because we've reintroduced Solomon Edgerton.
Right. And again, so now, and not only is Edgerton in the lineup, but Edgerton's return to the lineup last week allowed the coaches to rest Hill on the running back side. So now with Wekiva, they went from really only having one known option all the way to 3, and that just makes them that much more. And yet, they're not going to be dynamic, they're not going to be explosive to the degree that West Orange is, they're not going to do it constantly, but they are constantly effective with those 3 running backs. And then as you mentioned, you throw in there the 3-headed monster of wide receivers with Malik Talbert, Terrence Moore, and Jamal Williams. They present all kinds of problems for the defense, is because they each do something a little bit different, not just their skill set, but that skill set comes from their body type. Jalen Williams is 6'9". Terrence Moore is a shorter guy, but he's quicker, and Malik Talbert is a stronger guy. So they have 3 different options there. And the great thing about the 3 of them is, even though, as I just mentioned, each of them has maybe a specific skill set which grows out of their body type, they actually can do the other skills of the 2 other receivers. So great evolution. The team keeps evolving. And again, as you said, we now got the 2-headed monster under quarterback. It's not necessarily a large sample, but for the one game, they were very effective Robles and Preston combined to go 7 of 11 for 133 yards and 2 TDs. And again, being effective is not just having different options and knowing how to use them, but it's understanding the situation. Wekiva's greatest asset has been their starting field position because the evolution grows out of that. They're averaging 133 more total yards than their opponents, and that 133, most of that has been on the opponent's side of the field. They get the ball about 80% of the time on turnovers on that side, and both quarterbacks last week really took advantage of that statistic.
Yeah, I think you really have to give a lot of credit to Malcolm Green as that secret weapon who is allowing Wekiva to consistently win the field position game even when they may stumble on offense or defense. They're getting, and maybe even have turnovers in the mix. The fact that Wekiva is consistently getting better field position than Olympia, than Gwinnett, than the other team, the Winter Park, that has really enabled them to stay in games and to put games away that otherwise might have been a lot closer or riskier. So we've got now week 5 coming up here. Arguably one of the best offenses in the region in West Orange, battling against what is arguably one of the best defenses in the region with Wekiva.
Yeah, you could almost look at both teams and say that they're mirror images of each other in the sense that Wekiva, coming into the season, everybody knew, really going back 2 seasons, the defense was pretty much the anchor of what they do. And everything was built around that, and you wanted an offense that was good enough to be able to work with the defense in the sense of not making mistakes and allowing the defense to do what it does best. West Orange is about as high-powered an offense as there is, not just here locally, but in the state. They actually come in after 5 games averaging 253 points a game, or 253 points total, 50.6 per game. They like to get the lead. They are extremely explosive, extremely dynamic. That's their anchor, and then they build a defense that's good enough to hold the lead. And again, they do it by playing smart, by not making mistakes, and not putting the offense in bad position so the offense can do what it does well, which is great explosiveness.
And so certainly that signature defense for the Mustangs was recognized earlier this week. Ryan Davis and Tyler Davis, the first in school history to be awarded Under Armour jerseys for their participation in the All-America game coming up after the season. If you didn't have a chance to catch that in person or live, it is on our YouTube channel and available for replay, a very special moment in Mustang history. Those 2 guys, of course, are not brothers by blood, but try telling them that, because they certainly play as that and act as that. And then when you combine them with Brandon Hill in the secondary, Norrell Pollard, another great defender for the Mustangs who's going to play D1 ball next year. I mean, certainly even with West Orange's explosive offense, they've got a very heavy deck stacked against them tonight, and I think we're going to see a really special game with West Orange's offense and Wekiva's defense, which we'll be getting going here in about 3 minutes if we don't get any lightning strikes closer than we have been so far. So we are hopeful that we get to start this game by 7:30, and we will be carrying it on our website, wekivamustangs.com, with live play-by-play. We won't have live video tonight, but we do have the play-by-play stats going live to wekivamustangs.com. You can just click on the little bar chart icon next to today's game on the schedule. It'll take you right there. We'll also be live tweeting the game, and Neil and I will be back at halftime on Twitter to recap where we are so far. Again, my thanks to Neil Fisher from the Apopka Chief. This is Mark Barchi, the voice of the Mustangs, waiting for kickoff of game number 5 here at Raymond Screws Field.